There's Brenton. Brenton, can you hear us? Do you see your sound button on your, and maybe Traven, you can be messaging him to let him know what he has to do. But I'm really excited. You know, more and more people have been writing to us and saying, hey, have you got time for me to be on your show? We do have a process for people if you want to be on the show while Brenton is getting his stuff hooked up. But we love to hear from you guys. And if you have something in particular that you want to talk about here on the show, you can reach out directly to me. But it is important that you tell me what you want to come on and talk about. We're going to be talking with Brenton today about a lot of different things in his life, and how autism is a part of his life and things that he does to motivate other people. Can you hear us now, Brenton?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, and we can hear you. Fabulous. And so excited to have you here with us this morning. So Brenton, tell our audience members a little bit about you and how autism plays a role in your life.
Well, it's a great question. You know, it fluctuates. It goes in cycles a lot. It's a very, very misunderstood condition, probably one of the most misunderstood conditions on planet Earth, I'd say, because people like to pigeonhole it and say that it's, you know, high functioning, low functioning. And what people don't understand is that it fluctuates in cycles. So one day you could be not functioning at all. You could be completely brain dead from the brain fog. From the overstimulation, from the sensory overload challenges to everything in between. And then other days you're perfectly functioning and you feel fine. But I would say that there's more off days than on.
And so to be clear, because I never like to define for someone else, but how do you identify yourself? Do you identify as, what words do you use to identify yourself? Let's put it that way.
You know, I'm actually, I'm actually above and beyond identifications. I don't even really identify with much of anything anymore.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So tell us about you, because you're very multi-talented and you have a lot of things going on. Tell us a little bit about your life.
Sure, you gotta bear with me as I'm trying to multitask, because I'm actually, I'm on the phone right now.
Oh.
On Zoom, and I wanted to bring it over to my laptop, but there's like all these interferences, so I'm just saying forget the laptop. I'm just gonna go straight from my phone. But,
okay.
But that's what was happening, and then there was some sound problems, but I can hear you fine, you can hear me, so we're good. So your question was a little bit about more of my life and what I've...
Yeah, well, one of the things that you had said to me that you wanted to talk about, I'm looking back at my notes because I'm like, do I have this wrong? One of the things that you had said was that you wanted to talk about my life living on the autism spectrum, but I don't want to put labels. So tell me what you want to talk about with that.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's because you asked me, like, you know, a couple things to talk about, and I like to keep things relevant. And so it's interesting because I tuned into your show a little bit while I was multitasking and trying to, you know, get things set up, and you were, you know, basically, it sounded to me you guys were talking about sensory challenges and stuff. I heard you talk about going to the DMV and meltdowns and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm a very sensory person. I was saying at the start of the show that I don't have a diagnosis, but I'm a very sensory person, and I struggle with sensory things, and I have to take deep breaths, and I have to have strategies to help myself with that. But that's not the same as someone that has a diagnosis, and I'm well aware of that. But I always like to try to relate it to other people so that they can see, this isn't something that's foreign and removed. We can all understand these things. We just have them to different degrees. But is that how you feel about it?
Absolutely. It's a spectrum for a reason. And it took the DSM, a really long time to figure that out. I was actually denied multiple times because supposedly I appear so high functioning according to their criteria, as they put it, that but the testing was always really close. They said, oh, mild. If anything, you have like very form of mild autism. I'm like, look, I would tell them, I'd say, listen, mild, not mild, like people, autism is like a conundrum. It's so complex. And I think that when you try to figure it out, you dig yourself deeper in a hole of confusion. And then there's a lot of misinformation out there. And just like this whole COVID-19 thing, I think everybody's just trying to be a know-it-all, and everybody's just trying to think they have all the answers. And I think that they would rather act smart and play off being stupid, if that makes any sense to you, like
Yeah.
without judgments. Like they would, rather than go ask for an answer or figure out what the real answer is and get real evidence, they would rather act intelligent or think that they have the answer and make themselves look foolish for their own ego purposes. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think
what I'm interested in is that you have a very unique vantage point, because you are someone who, I imagine you've dealt with some challenges in your life, and you tend to be somebody who comes through them, and have recently had challenges that you've come through.
That's my specialty.
We'll talk about that.
Sure.
There's even a name that they have for you. What is your nickname?
The Walking Miracle Warrior.
And why? Why do you have that? And how has that been reaffirmed recently?
Great question. So the reason why I go by the Walking Miracle Warrior is because I've overcome things that most people, or, when I say most, I don't really refer that or put it in the category of all. But statistically, out of a lot of people, I've overcome a lot of things that you usually don't walk away from. And there's a lot of people out there, that also have gone through similar situations, but we're talking like, medically, they said it was impossible, like the percentages were like 0.00001, like just impossible odds, so I've been deemed a medical anomaly. Not just once, but multiple times.
And I don't want to pry, but like, what are you willing to tell us? Like, what are some of the things that you've come through?
Sure. I don't know how much you investigated me or researched me or learned about me or whatever. I'm famous amongst certain circles. There's different levels of fame. You got like worldwide, global fame. They call that the Tom Cruise fame, or whatever. And then you got fame where people know you amongst certain circles or certain individuals. And I'm kind of that name. My name's Brenton Tyler Hoffmann. People, when I meet people, they'll go, "Oh, that name sounds familiar. I've heard that before," or "You look familiar." So it's kind of like that, where certain individuals recognize you and other people have no idea who you are. But to answer your question, in terms of like what I've been through, like I said, my life is an open book. You can research me. My information's out there. It's on Facebook. It's on Google. But for a few things, for those that don't know me, going back in the history a little bit, I overcame a rare blood infection bacterium at 6 months of age. I had a hernia at age 5. I mean, what child, 5 years old has a hernia? You know what I mean? Like, that's serious stuff. So we're talking the rare blood infection, survived that. The hernia, survived that. And then, just overcame serious stuff, years of child abuse and neglect and just so many different complicated things on top of sensory challenges and things like that, as if that wasn't enough to deal with. But the serious stuff was like, at 18 years old, I was in a major car accident and shattered my C6 vertebrae. If anybody knows anything about vertebrae and stuff like that, your C6 is probably one of the most sensitive vertebrae on your spine. Very similar injury. The same thing that happened to Christopher Reeve happened to me, and I actually survived it. I actually miraculously walked away 12 hours later when the doctors told me I would never walk again, and they were just scratching their head like, how's this even possible?
You're a miracle. You're a survivor.
Yeah. Yes. Resilient, as resilient as they come, I would say. Yeah.
And you've taken that, and you don't take it lightly from what I've seen of you, and are trying to utilize that for good. You are a very handsome young man. And so you are a model and you are an actor.
A lot of different things. Yeah. Not professionally.
A lot of different things.
Yeah. On my journey, I've done a lot of things. I've modeled and I've, done music. I'm a hip hop recording artist and a music producer, and I've done a lot of different things. But my main focus, is coaching and consulting, harmonic consulting, is my company. And, you know, I do a lot of charitable work, and, you know, I give away my time, and I do things more from a philanthropic, a humanitarian perspective. And I've helped a lot of people with disabilities, including autism. And I've actually had, you know, one of my students actually is a pretty successful person on the autism circuit that speaks all over the country with his mother. He's a former student of mine, and I helped him and inspired him to get to the next level of greatness and, you know, really step into that resilience. So
Is this somebody we've had on the show?
possibly, yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
You're not allowed to say their name?
He might have been on the show. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name. I mean, he's given me a testimonial before, but we're no longer in contact. We don't, I don't help him anymore. He's done his own thing. I think that there was a perceive, and I say it very, when I really pay attention to the words I say, but I would say from his perspective, it was a perceived, he misunderstood me because he's on the autism spectrum. He might have somehow in some way misinterpreted my intentions of me helping him. You know, everyone has their fears and their challenges and their struggles, you know, and the stories they make up in their head, regardless if they're true or not. And I think it was one of those situations, but I helped him tremendously in his life and his path, and, you know, the success that he's had today.
Now, one of the things that you also said that you wanted to talk about is the phrase, the spectrum in everything. Tell me what you want to talk about with that.
Sure. So I think that people will start to understand autism, and not just autism, but, you know, other disabilities, disorders, diseases, all kinds of things, even this whole COVID-19 thing going on right now. If they stop identifying, again, right, when you ask me, how do I identify with stuff? I don't identify with things anymore, because I think once you start to identify, you pigeonhole yourself into one particular thing, and then it's no longer a spectrum. So I think that everything truly is a spectrum, all the way down from, you know, a snowflake with its most unique original designs. There's no two alike, all the way down, you know what I mean? Like everything truly is a spectrum. There is no one size fits all. I don't know if you got that part in my message where I said that autism isn't a cookie, people. You know, there's no cookie cutter approach to this. You know, stop identifying with what you think it is, and just realize that it's like a fingerprint. There's no one two alike. It's just, that's the way it is.
And I so appreciate that. I don't know that I know how to overcome, because as I always talk about, you know, that here on the show, we're talking about the larger autism community. So that starts with individuals who have a diagnosis, but then we extend that to everybody who loves them, right? And for the people who, I'm one of the people, I have a son who was diagnosed at 2.5. And so I care and I want to be helpful. And the last thing I want to do is use language that sets anybody back, right? But sometimes we don't know. So I want to ask you, like, what, for those of us who love someone on the spectrum, what are the things that we can be doing to help and not hinder? Because we don't always know.
Sure, great question. So I think that's when you treat them as the individual that they are through that perspective or that experience, and stop treating them like they're 5, or stop treating them like they have autism, and you just treat them as so in that experience, if that makes any sense, then you'll have better and greater results. I think that if you treat, okay, there's this thing in sales, a lot of us learn this just in general in business and just life, and I've especially learned it. It's called mirroring and matching. And unfortunately, that doesn't work with somebody with autism. If you mirror and match them, they actually will think that you're giving them a hard time, what I've noticed. And again, everyone's different, but I'm saying there's these universal similarities in a lot of people with autism. And I think that when you have autism, I've noticed this on my journey, that when you have autism, you have really greater intuition levels, and you know who has autism and who doesn't. Like I can literally look at somebody, I kid you not, and I can know right away if they have autism or not. It's just one of my gifts. Yeah, I just know who's on the spectrum, who isn't. And people say, well, that's extremely controversial. Like, you're not a doctor. You don't need to be a doctor to have this level of intuition. It's God-given. You're born with it.
Interesting. Somebody's written in because one of the things we have a question of the day and we ask people, what do you do to help yourself when you're having a meltdown? And somebody wrote in and said, I rarely have meltdowns, but they are vicious when they happen. And they went on to say that having a learning disability made me feel stupid. And as a former teacher, boy, that just rips my heart apart. Because one of the things that we've been talking about all week is that people learn in lots of different ways. That doesn't make anybody wrong.
Yep. People love in
And
different ways, people express in different ways, people, and
yeah.
it really comes down to cognitive dissonance. Look that up, cognitive dissonance. And it really comes down to our belief systems and what shapes and makes our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Has anybody ever made you feel like you were less than because of who you are?
Well, great question. Back then, yes, I used to believe that people made me feel certain ways, but over all the work that I've done on myself and my level of awareness and perception, I realized that it was never anybody who made me feel anything, but it was more myself based on my own perceptual experience.
Interesting. And so when you're coaching people, who's like your ideal client? Like what kind of person do you really love to coach?
Well, for one, great question. I love to coach people who are coachable, who are willing to want to change and believe that they not so much have a problem, but look at it from the perspective of they want to grow and they want to expand their level of consciousness and awareness, and they want to know how to basically stop constantly always trying to identify with things that's what they are. Those are my best clients, because they're more likely to have the most success in their life.
And is it pretty open-ended for your clients, Brenton? If they do you only take people who want to be in the public eye and want to be speakers or writers? Or if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I just really, for instance, I want to be better in my social circle. I feel like I don't understand when I'm around, people of the opposite sex. I don't understand all the unspoken stuff. Do you take those kinds of clients? What's your area of expertise, or is it broad?
I'm really doing my best these days to narrow it down to one specific category of individuals. But I mean, for the longest time, it's been broad. And I think that's actually, I think that's hurt me more than helped me, because it's like, I have that mentality and that heart center where I just want to help as many people as I can. And I think that, I mean, it's a great quality, but what happens is it limits me, because there's only so much time. There's only so much, there's so many hours in a day, there's only so much you can do for somebody. I think it really comes down to work with the willing, who's willing to change their life for the better, and who's willing to invest. Life is, yes, I've given my services complimentary and have helped people tremendously for a long time. Most of my work has been very, philanthropic, and, and I help all different types of people, and people who genuinely could not afford me, and all these things. And but I think it comes to a time in your life where life is really a value system. And I think that people are willing to truly invest in themselves if they can really see an outcome in a situation. And I have to help them see that outcome, but it's never up to me. I don't ever guarantee anything, because it's humanly impossible to guarantee something.
Sure. And one of the other things that you said that you wanted to talk about is sensory overload to the max. And I've already identified that I'm somebody who has sensory issues, so I'm very interested.
Yes. So for one, I'd like to ask you a question and return to that. How long have you had sensory issues? Have you had them your whole life?
Yes. From being a very young child. Yes.
Right. So like when your mom was vacuuming the house, like what did you do?
I would sit and do this so that it would make a noise. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd pat your ears, or you'd hold them?
No, I would pat them so that it would make the noise. It would make a funny noise, and I liked the noise that it made. Right.
So here's
I haven't thought of that in years.
Great. I used to do the same thing, and I never knew why, but it all started to make sense after I got my diagnosis. And you know, the thing is it's never too late to get a diagnosis, and the diagnosis is not just to have a label and say, okay, look at me, I got autism now. It's to give you a level of understanding, like, okay, cool, I'm not crazy, this is real, I've had this my whole life, it all makes sense now. And that's how it was with me. Now, to answer your question, because I was curious, I wanted to ask you a question after you asked me a question, because I want to see how it was relevant. Yeah, the sensory challenges have been unexplainably, incomprehensibly complex, to say the least. Like,
Yeah.
they are very, very overwhelming, and they never, no matter how much meditation I've done, all the thousands upon thousands of hours, I haven't, you know, I can't even keep track of how much meditation and going within, and all the work, you know, spiritual work I've done on myself, as well as personally developing myself for 20 years. I mean, I've been on this journey. I still struggle with these sensory challenges, and again, some days are worse than others. People need to understand that there's going to be days where it's going to be so overwhelming, you're just going to feel like you're going to, you know, crawling in your skin kind of thing. But the thing is, again, it's a spectrum. Goes back to those other questions, right? Like in the sensory, it's like you never know, and you can never pinpoint when it's going to be worse or when it's not. Sometimes it's like anxiety or like panic attack. It could just hit you out of nowhere. But there's subtleties, and if you're aware and you've had it enough times, you could actually catch yourself from having that anxiety attack or that meltdown, going into that question from before, and you could actually lessen the impact of that experience, that sensory experience, or that reaction you're going to have, because you are keen awareness of seeing it or feeling it before it happens. Does that make sense? You
Yeah, it
know,
makes total sense. Yeah.
yeah, so you can calm yourself down in situations because you're aware of what you went through before. That's what I could describe it.
Yeah, no, I love. So, okay, now I have another question for you. Do you find, I know for me, one of the things that I discovered is that I have allergies. I have both food allergies and
Yeah.
allergies to things in the environment. And so certain times of the year, I have to be extra careful with my diet, because if it's like, it's almost like my body can handle this much. And if you put this much more on, then everything cascades down. So for my sensory issues, if it's allergy season and I've eaten something that I have a mild allergy to and something sensory happens, it's over. It's over.
Yeah.
Game over. Do you find that too, or is that just me?
Absolutely. That's why I'm nodding my head. Yeah, in agreement. Yeah, and I think it's very common for a lot of people on the spectrum. Again, I think there's, okay, here's the thing. When you become really, really aware of this, and the more, I'd say the more in tune you are, or the more consciously aware of something you are, and the more in the heart, the less you're in the ego. Does that make sense? So if you're
Yeah.
trying to figure everything out, right, you think you have all the answers and you think you know everything, then, you know, it usually is a backlash. But I have become very, very aware of my sensory acuity, and not just within myself, but I can literally, I know, I'm like kind of like the good doctor in a way. I know when somebody's hurting. I know when somebody's in pain. I know, even if they're showing me that they're not, even if you're smiling right at me, looking at me, look like everything's fine, like look at me, hey, how's it going? We're all just having a good time here. I know, I could see through the veil of people's pain, people's confusion, people's anxiety, people's worries. And it's kind of shocking. You know, there's times when I could, you know, I don't even need to make direct contact to get information. That's where my intuition comes from, you know.
So I know you don't like labels, but if people talk to you about whether you are, because there are people who identify themselves as intuits, that they
Yeah,
can intuitively
yeah.
do. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I try not to get caught up in the labels, but unfortunately we live in a world, us human beings, we like to identify with certain things. I mean, I can identify with certain things. I just don't like to pigeonhole me, because then people say, oh, that guy was pretty interesting. That actor that was on Autism Live. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. He's an actor. What movie is he in? I haven't seen him in a movie. You see, you get pigeonholed into this certain category, and then people think that's what you are. So it's like, if I was to, if somebody was to say, what do I identify with, or what are you, or, you know, how, I would just say, you know, it's hard to say that. I would just say, because people have called me, you know, a modern day Renaissance man, because I do so many different things, you know, and again, that can hurt you as more than help you, because if you
Yes.
have autism and ADHD, you don't go you're all over the place. You got your hands in too many cookie jars.
Yes, I understand completely what you're singing my language here. So let's stop for just a second because we're
Sure.
running out of time here, and I want to make sure that people know if they're interested in being coached by you, or they know somebody, or they want more information about you. Where would we send them?
Sure. So got a website, brentontylerhoffmann.com. Just how's it sound? I don't know if you put it up, but it's Brenton and then Tyler, middle name Hoffmann, Hoffmann. Kind of a long name, brentontylerhoffmann.com. You can go there. All the information's there. You can, it explains everything, but also, it's connected to my other site, Harmonic Consulting, and I have Facebook, Harmonic Consulting. You can go there. You could check out the testimonials and the people that I've helped, video as well as written testimonials, to make a sound decision for yourself if we'd be a good fit or not. I'm not a fit for everybody.
Wonderful.
I'm again, people try to identify me. They'll say, "Are you a nice person? Are you a mean person?" I am what you want me to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it really comes down to how bad do you want change. I think if people want change as bad as they want to breathe, they'll make change and they'll invest in their future and their life.
And I'm gonna readdress this, but if you don't want to talk about this, then we won't answer it. But there was something that I believe from being friends with you on Facebook that recently that you went through that sort of reaffirmed that warrior survivor thing. Do you want to talk about that or not?
Oh, sure. Yeah. What would you like to ask me? For one, I was in a magazine just recently on the cover of Influential People magazine, rated as one of the top influential, resilient experts in the world. So I'm pretty proud of that.
That's amazing. But I was talking specifically about the fact that you had a little bit of a COVID experience, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's complex, right? Because I got sick in February. Oh, was it February? I'm trying to remember.
I feel like it was March.
Yeah. Well, March 20th, I ended up in the hospital. I actually, I really wrote it out, me being resilient, and I just thought it was a respiratory infection that went into my lungs. And I thought, whatever, I'll just ride this off. No big deal. I've always had that mentality, ride it out till the wheels fall off kind of thing. And it was just too much to bear. I couldn't take it. Drove myself to the hospital when I was really sick. I didn't even know how sick I was, but I drove myself to the hospital, and got there, and very, very stressful situation. I had to call in advance, let them know that I was coming. A lot of runaround, very stressed. I mean, you're already sick and stressed out in general. You have to go through more stress. But anyways, get there. They run tests. They finally tell me that they had a concern. Saw that I had what is called bilateral pneumonia in both of my lungs. I'm thinking, oh, great, that does not sound good. What's the next step? Blah, blah, blah. They said, well, your insurance doesn't cover this particular hospital that you're at. So, we're going to have to send you home. I'm thinking, you're sending me home with bilateral pneumonia? Like, so you're sending me to my bed to die? Is that what you're saying to me? I'm like, you got to find another solution. So they got me to another hospital that accepted my insurance. Go figure, right? It's always an insurance thing, right, that gets in the way. And they ran some other tests again, confirmed that I did have double bilateral pneumonia, and put me in a special room. And I felt like I was in the movie E.T. meets the boy that could fly from the 80s. It was just ridiculous.
Were they all in hazmat suits and things around you? That's got to be weird.
Yeah, all the above. Yeah. And then finally got my test results. Took a really long time because that was a couple months ago. So I guess things have sped up now. But and that, yeah, they said that they confirmed that I actually had the COVID-19, and I was just like, you got to be freaking kidding me! Like with bilateral pneumonia, which like most people are like on respirators and like or die from that, So again, right, a true walking miracle. I mean, the fact that they told me I had it, but then on top of that, the fact that I was able to, I didn't even, my CO2 levels were normal. They were looking at me like, how's this even possible? Like, your CO2 levels are normal. You have bilateral pneumonia, like, all this stuff. So anyways, So yeah, it's a mystery to me because, my whole life I've been sick. I've had challenges. Sensory challenges with the autism, all that stuff. But I was also diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease as well. I mean, you can look at my story. It's pretty amazing. It's enough to make your head spin, and all
But
the
here
different.
you are, you overcame all of that. Here
Yeah.
you are, and you seem pretty healthy now. Do you feel well now?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and I mean, compared to that, yes, I do. But I mean, I have been, you know, in the house a lot and cabin fever and haven't spent time with anybody and this whole COVID-19 and social distancing and all this stuff. And we're talking, I've been in the house for 60 days or probably no longer, so I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like I feel kind of under the weather, because I don't go out much. And so I
But
feel,
how are your lungs though? Or is the bilateral pneumonia gone?
oh yeah. I mean, it left an after effect for whatever reason. Like I feel like I'm still regenerating and recovering from the hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes a while. I mean, I've had pneumonia before, and it takes a while to get over it fully. But
I'm doing
I'm
better.
glad I'm glad that you're on the mend at least,
Yeah.
and what a great testimony for people, to hear that you did get over it and that you are an amazing survivor and a warrior. And so
Thank you.
give the websites again because we're out of time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It doesn't even seem like it was like, how much time was that? It's like time goes by so fast. I'm like,
I
what just happened?
know. And we actually kept you much longer than we had said we were going to. So thanks for being willing. So
I appreciate you
what's
having
your
me on.
website?
Yeah, the website is Brenton, my name, BrentonTylerHoffmann.com. Also, if you guys are curious about me, I'm a public figure. You can Google me, Brenton Tyler Hoffmann. Just on Google, you can find stuff on me there. But if you go to my website, all the information's there. Check it out. Reach out to me, and yeah, I'd love to talk to you more.
Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure. Thanks so much.
You
Thanks
stay
for having me.
healthy. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.